Temuan 2, organisasi dan arsitektur komputer. Ini topiknya adalah I/O dan bus yang pertama. I/O itu adalah input output. Jadi kita ngomong tentang modul input dan output. I/O, input output. Yang pertama, mengapa perlu adanya modul input output? Itu alasannya adalah karena jenis peripheral atau device itu macam-macam. Ukuran data yang dapat ditransfer dalam satu saat itu bisa berbeda. Ketika yang satu dihandle, katakanlah keyboard dihandle, itu kecepatannya rendah. Dia paling paling berapa? Katakanlah maksimum dalam 1 detik itu katakanlah cuma beberapa ratus byte. Tapi kalau kalau I/O-nya yang dihandle adalah network card, network interface card, itu kecepatannya megabyte per second. Jadi bedanya drastis. Yang satu ratusan, hundreds bytes per second, yang satunya megabytes per second. Bedanya drastis. Uh, uh, ini ukuran data yang dapat ditransfer itu, yang keyboard itu apa namanya? Cukup satu karakter ASCII. Sementara kalau yang lain, yang sensor tertentu itu bisa jadi sekali pengiriman satu bloknya itu tidak lagi 1 byte tetapi 1 word, 2 byte atau 4 byte dalam satu cycle. Jadi ukurannya bisa macam-macam tergantung device-nya. Kecepatannya beda antara NIC, Network Interface Card versus keyboard. Terus format datanya berbeda. Kalau si keyboard format datanya ASCII, kalau network interface card format datanya menggunakan protokol TCP/IP. Jadi masing-masingnya punya spesifikasi yang berbeda-beda. Nah, secara internal sendiri, secara internal, kecepatan semua peripheral itu jauh lebih lambat dibanding kecepatan CPU dan RAM. Jadi kalau CPU dan RAM-nya itu dipakai untuk menghandle misalkan input dari keyboard, maka habis daya komputasinya CPU dan RAM itu habis untuk ngurusi hanya sekedar nunggu orang ngetik. Nah itu kan rugi. Padahal CPU itu sangat-sangat cepat dibanding kecepatan input dari keyboard. Jadi makanya perlu ada satu modul terpisah yang untuk menghandle device-device input output tersebut supaya si CPU dan RAM-nya itu bisa bekerja sendiri. Terus apa fungsi utama modul I/O? Itu satu, untuk menjembatani peripheral dengan CPU dan memori yang kecepatannya berbeda. Dua, untuk menjembatani CPU dan memori dengan satu atau beberapa peripheral yang berbeda tadi, yang spesifikasinya berbeda. Peripheral di sini artinya adalah device eksternal yang terhubung ke modul I/O. Device eksternal, jenis-jenisnya ada yang kategorikan, ada grup pertama yang namanya human readable, yaitu sarana komunikasi manusia dengan mesin. Jadi intinya ini peripheral yang manusia bisa paham outputnya. Contohnya adalah screen monitor, printer, terus keyboard. Berikutnya yang jenis kedua, the second group, itu adalah machine readable, sarana komunikasi antara komputer dengan device lain sesama komputer. Contohnya hard disk, sensor, aktuator, itu contoh-contoh device-nya. Hard disk itu kita kan tidak bisa membaca secara langsung informasi yang tersimpan di sana. Kita juga tidak bisa menulis informasi secara langsung ke hard disk. Harus ada device yang lain yang menghandle itu. Sensor suhu atau sensor kelembapan udara, itu kita tidak bisa langsung menarik datanya dari sensor, karena sensor itu biasanya dia ambil data dari lingkungan terus kemudian diterjemahkan dalam berupa jadi sinyal listrik. Nah, kita tidak bisa menerjemahkan sinyal listrik secara langsung. Aktuator itu misalkan perangkat untuk menggerakkan motor listrik. Jadi output dari si komputer menggerakkan misalkan baling-baling misalkan. Nah, kita tidak bisa mengetahui cara proses menggerakkannya seperti apa, karena kita manusia tidak bisa menghasilkan listrik sesuai dengan spesifikasi dari kabel-kabel yang ada di baling-baling tersebut. Tapi komputer bisa. Kalau dia memang punya modul I/O yang memang sesuai untuk si baling-baling tersebut. Terus grup yang ketiga adalah communication. Sarana komunikasi komputer dengan komputer yang lain, tidak lagi dengan mesin. Jadi sesama komputer komunikasinya. Kalau yang di sini dengan mesin, yang di sini dengan sesama komputer. Contohnya adalah modem, terus network interface card. Ini blok diagram dari device eksternal. Jadi ini kalau ada device eksternal, katakanlah printer misalkan. Printer di sini dia akan punya mekanisme output dan input terkait device-nya dia. Ini data, device unique to and from environment. Jadi kalau si printer dia membuat cetakan tinta pada kertas, yang dia baca adalah statusnya. Status kertasnya sekarang ada di mana? Sudah masukkah? Lagi ditulisi-kah? Atau kertasnya lagi jam? Itu yang dibaca dari sinyal luar. Kalau ini adalah device keyboard, misalkan, ini datanya adalah misalkan data yang dibaca sama dia, data yang masuk ke dia ini adalah misalkan pengeklikan tombol satu touch keyboard. Sementara yang dikeluarkannya adalah tombol lampu, apakah caps lock-nya menyala, caps lock-nya on atau off. Ini yang di-outputkan ke dia. Jadi ini satu modul I/O. Nah, data-data tersebut akan diterjemahkan oleh sebuah transducer. Transducer itu sensor nama lainnya. Sensornya dia itu akan diterjemahkan. Bukan juga sih, karena aktuator itu juga termasuk transducer. Jadi dia yang menulisi itu juga disebut transducer. Jadi transducer di sini artinya adalah sensor ataupun aktuator. Nah, di sana ada buffer memori. Memori tempat dia nerima data dari modul I/O-nya komputer, diterima ke buffer dilempar ke transducer, atau sebaliknya. Ada inputan dari environment dibaca oleh sensor, dituliskannya ke buffer di sini. Terus ada jalurnya antara buffer ke modul I/O. Nah, proses pembacaannya di sini itu menggunakan kontrol logik yang diatur oleh modul I/O. Jadi ini kontrol signal dari modul I/O, satu signal ke modul I/O. Ya, ada pertanyaan kah? Okay, sir, kindly can you explain a little bit in English too? Okay, I will do so. So I will try to explain in Indonesian language and also in English. So yes, I will start doing so now. So here is the diagram block of the external device. So here the block in gray symbolizes the external device. It has three main components. First is transducer, and then the buffer memory, and then the control logic. So the transducer here deals with external data. Either it reads the data, so here the arrow coming into the transducer symbolizes the reading process for this device external device. So in this case, for example, if it is a keyboard device, here the device external is keyboard, then the inward arrow symbolizes how the user press the keyboard buttons there. So it will send a signal toward the transducer, and the transducer here is responsible to convert it from mechanical signal into the electrical signal, and the result is stored in the buffer here. This is the inward direction arrow. And then for the outward direction arrow, for example, for printer, for example, this device is printer, it send the data toward the printer. So for example, in printing out, putting out the ink into a certain position of the paper. So it is the outward here. For the keyboard example, outward arrow here symbolizes how the keyboard send or activates the caps lock button on the keyboard. So if we press the caps lock button, it will turning on the caps lock button, LED light on the keyboard, and that is sending the signal on the keyboard. And for the printer, inward arrow here symbolizes how the printer sense the condition of the job. So for example, at the beginning of the printing job, the printer needs to detect whether there is a paper or not in the paper slot. And then if there is one paper, it will pull the paper inside and then start printing something based on the location of based on the position of the paper inside the printer. So this basically in its printer needs to synchronize whether at certain condition, certain position or certain location of the paper, it needs to print a certain ink into a certain location. So in order to know whether the paper is in the correct position or not, the printer needs to read something from the sensing, and it will be put in the buffer here. Transducer here has two major parts. The first is the sensor and the other is the actuator. Sensor is for sensing and actuator is for performing action for the device. And then result is stored in the buffer, and also if it is the output device, then the CPU will send to the I/O module and send it to the buffer here to be written by the actuator to the environment. And this mechanism is controlled by the control logic here. And the control logic will get control signals here from the I/O module, so that's why it is inward arrow. And it will emit the status signal to the I/O module, whether there is a problem with the paper, for example, for the printer example. If it is jam, then control logic will send a status signal to the I/O module saying that, hey, I'm jam, and the I/O module will forward signal to the CPU, and based on the program on the memory at that time, the CPU will decide what should happen next, whether it should stop or whether it should continue printing. That depends on the program. Contohnya di sini, di proses tadi input output dari environment, dari lingkungan ke transducer, ke buffer, dan transfer data ke modul I/O itu dikontrol oleh control logic di sini. Dan control logic di sini menerima informasi dari control signal dari I/O modul dan mengirimkan status signalnya ke I/O modul. Jadi kalau ada masalah, misalkan kertasnya jam, itu control logicnya akan kirim sinyal ke modul I/O. Modul I/O akan kirim sinyal ke CPU. Dan berdasarkan apa yang ada di memori program saat itu, CPU akan mengirim kontrol signal lagi. Tergantung programnya. Ada program yang ngomong stop, berhenti printing. Ada program yang tidak apa-apa, terus printing saja sampai selesai dulu. Nah, itu tergantung programnya. Tapi mekanismenya seperti itu. So, is there any question? Ada pertanyaan? Oke, let's continue then. Nah, ini diagram modul I/O. This one is a diagram for the I/O module. So here, actually, this diagram here, data status control connected to this one, data status control. Nih. Jadi untuk tiap device, untuk tiap peripheral itu dia adanya di sebelah sini. dia terkoneksi ke bagian sini, external device interface. So, for every single device, it is actually located in this part. And data status and control will be handled by this external device interface logic. Di dalam satu diagram modul I/O, dia bisa punya beberapa ini, EDIL. Inside one I/O module, it can has many external device interface logic, or ADIL. So there can be many. So that for every single device, it has its own ADIL. Jadi untuk tiap perangkat dia akan punya satu external device interface logic di sini. Nah, di sini nanti setiap internal device logic akan terkoneksi ke I/O logic di sini. For every single ADIL, it has a connection to I/O logic. I/O logic sini kontrol oleh CPU. Ini ada control lines, input dan output, dan ada address lines, input dan output. So, for the I/O logic, it has a direct connection to the CPU through the address lines via input to this part, this inward arrow, and this output or outward arrow here. Address line and also control lines. Inward arrow to the I/O logic and outward arrow to the control lines. Selain dua address line dan control line di sini, datanya ditransfer lewat sini. Ini addressing sama controlling. Kalau yang di sini datanya lewat data registers dan lewat status atau control register. Jadi modelnya akan sama. Ini data lainnya di sini. Ada data, ada status dan kontrol. Ada data, ada statusnya di sini address sama kontrol. Mirip status dan address. Bedanya kalau address itu nanti masalah memori, kalau status ini kondisi dari si device. So, other than using these address lines and control lines, I/O logic has this additional components, data registers and status or control registers. Both of them are connected to the data lines to the memory or to the CPU. So in this case, we can see the similarity between this part and this part. So it has data, both of them has data lines, both of them have control lines, and both of them has similar mechanism for status here. One status for the peripheral. In this case, status and control register is in here. But then it also has this address lines to control which part of the memory needs to be written for the data. Oke. Jadi di sini dalam satu diagram modul ada I/O logic, terus ada banyak external device interface logic. Dia akan mengkoneksikan, intinya modul I/O ini dia menjembatani antara device-device eksternal, device-device I/O di sebelah kanan, dan CPU atau memori utama di sebelah kiri. So, in this case, I/O module has the main function to connect between the CPU and the memory on the left-hand side, and the external devices on the right-hand side. That's the main purpose of the I/O module. Itu fungsi utama dari I/O module. Sampai sini ada pertanyaan? Is there any question? Is there any question? No? Let me continue. We are now, sekarang kita mau masuk ke teknik proses input dan proses output. Ada namanya program I/O, interrupt driven I/O, dan direct memory access atau DMA. Sepanjang perkuliahan ini kita nanti akan membahas masing-masingnya. Kita akan membahas masing-masingnya sampai detail, sampai DMA di sini. Now we are going to talk about input and output techniques. They are divided into 3 different techniques. The first is the program I/O, the second is interrupt driven I/O, and the third is direct memory access or DMA. For this class, I'm going to talk about each of them in details. So I might go deep into one topic on the second item here. But then later on I will continue the discussion to the direct memory access here nearing the end of the class. Jadi nanti kemungkinan saya akan bisa membahas sesuatu itu sampai dalam detail di bagian interrupt driven I/O. Tapi setelah itu saya akan backup, saya akan keluar lagi, saya akan membahas yang di sini, yang direct memory access. Sekarang masuk ke penjelasannya masing-masing dulu. Yang program I/O, yaitu I/O terjadi saat program yang di dalamnya terdapat perintah I/O dieksekusi. Eksekusi I/O terus-menerus melibatkan prosesor. Ini ciri utamanya dari program I/O. So, for program I/O, input and output process happens when program encounters a routine to access a specific I/O device. And then this program will execute that I/O device routines. And then in this case, the I/O execution happens continuously using the processor capacities, using the processor cycle. So processor cannot do anything else. Jadi ketika prosesor ini melakukan eksekusi I/O, tidak bisa melakukan hal yang lain. This is the first one, program I/O. Yang kedua, interrupt driven I/O. I/O terjadi pada saat perintah I/O dieksekusi. Nah, sesudah perintah I/O dieksekusi, CPU bisa melanjutkan perintah lainnya dan tidak terlibat terus-menerus. CPU aktif lagi jika sudah ada interrupt dari device atau dari modul I/O. Itu bedanya. Kalau yang sini dia harus CPU terus terlibat, di sini tidak harus. Dia melakukan yang lain, terlibat lagi kalau ada interrupt. So, for the second one, interrupt driven I/O happens when the I/O routines is being executed. But then, the difference between the second and the first method is that after the I/O routines being executed, CPU can execute other routines. CPU does not need to fix its power, its cycle, its computing capabilities to the I/O process. The CPU can stop doing the I/O process. It can do anything else. CPU will come back to the I/O process when there is an interrupt coming from the device or coming from the I/O module. That's the difference between the first and the second. Basically, CPU just go away, just initiate and then execute some initialization regarding the I/O process, and then the CPU can stop working on it and start working on other. CPU will come back to that I/O status when there is an interrupt. Jadi beda utama antara proses kedua dan proses pertama di sini adalah kalau yang kedua dia bisa starting sesuatu terkait tentang perintah-perintah I/O. Setelah itu CPU sudah bisa lepaskan. Nanti biar si device I/O sama modul I/O itu berurusan dulu dengan perangkat device input outputnya. Nah, nanti CPU akan balik lagi baru kalau ada interrupt. Kalau tidak ada interrupt ya CPU ngerjakan yang lain dulu. Yang terakhir, direct memory access, ini DMA. Ini transfer datanya ditangani oleh sebuah prosesor I/O khusus. Jadi CPU sama mirip seperti di sini, mirip seperti di yang proses nomor 2, dia tidak perlu terlibat terus-menerus. Nanti ada prosesor khusus, proses tambahan. Itu bedanya. Nah, the third one, the data transfer is being handled by another specific I/O processor. So that means the CPU does not need to work on the I/O process continuously. This additional processor will handle that for the CPU. The details for each one of them I will explain next. Detailnya dari masing-masing ini akan saya jelaskan berikutnya. Ada pertanyaan dulu tapi dari sini. Is there any question so far?
Tidak, Pak.
Oke, lanjut. Let's continue. Apakah interrupt itu? What is an interrupt? Interrupt adalah mekanisme untuk menghentikan sementara waktu urutan eksekusi program yang normal atau sekuen program jika kondisi tertentu telah terjadi atau ada program lain yang lebih mendesak untuk dieksekusi. So, what is an interrupt? It is a mechanism to stop program sequence execution time if one or several specific condition happen, or if there is another program asking to be executed with the higher priority. So sorry, let me reword it in another way. So if there is another program with a higher priority, ask the CPU to request or request the CPU, hey CPU, I have the higher request, so do this first. I need this now. So that's an interrupt. That's an interrupt, and the CPU needs to stop whatever program is being executed at the time, and the CPU needs to focus on working on that condition or that program's request. Jadi kalau yang di sini kondisi tertentu telah terjadi itu contohnya misalkan tadi ada modul I/O yang memberikan sinyal interrupt. Jadi waktunya si device I/O-nya dibaca. Atau ada program lain yang lebih mendesak itu yang prioritasnya lebih tinggi. Dia ngomong, aku sudah selesai, aku butuh di handle programku dan aku butuh waktu sekarang. Harus dilakukan sekarang. Karena prioritasku lebih tinggi, maka kamu harus lakukan sekarang. Maka CPU ikut, nuruti. Oke, ini ada yang lebih mendesak, maka yang aku lakukan sekarang, aku stop, terus aku jalankan yang permintaannya si program ini. Apa penyebab interrupt? What causes interrupt? First is program. Yang pertama adalah program. Misalnya terjadi overflow. Kalau jadi overflow harus ada interrupt. Karena kalau enggak gitu nanti perhitungannya kan bisa salah. Usernya akan bisa menerima data output yang salah. Atau terjadi division by zero, pembagian oleh bilangan zero, bilangan 0. Atau akses ilegal ke memori. Nah, ini karena berbahaya. Akses ilegal ke memori yang bukan punyanya dia itu bisa menimbulkan security concern, security breaching. So the first one is the program. For example, inside the program, there happens an overflow. So the program needs to be interrupted. Otherwise, the final output might be wrong. Or there's a division by zero. Again, needs to execute a special condition, an exception or something. Because otherwise, the program might be wrong or in worst case, stuck or hang, crash. And then memory illegal access. So this one can cause a concern regarding the security, because if one program can read another program memory data, then that would cause security breach. Yang berikutnya timer. Ini dihasilkan oleh timer prosesor internal prosesor. Jadi kalau waktunya si prosesor di jam misalkan, di jam itu maka dia harus ngecek signal jam. Nah itu internal prosesor. Kemudian digunakan juga pada preemptive multitasking. Jadi kalau ada programnya yang memang dibikin ada timer, terus waktunya timernya programnya itu bekerja, maka dia harus mengerjakan sesuatu. Nah itu timer. Second one is timer. Example for the first example is coming from internal processor timer. So for example, internal processor needs to update the clock. So it needs to read the clock device and then updates clocks being shown on the application or on the operating system. That's one example. And then the second example is when the program has their own timer mechanism. So for example, we as the programmer create a program for every 5 seconds. The program needs to process, for example, I don't know, some certain calculation. In this case, when the timer ticks, when the timer times ended, finish, and it ticks, then the program needs to go to a separate methods or separate memory routine, separate program routine, and then it needs to execute that one. So, ya. Jadi itu contohnya. Yang berikutnya adalah I/O. Ini yang tadi yang saya jelaskan di sebelumnya. Dihasilkan oleh I/O controller. Jadi misalkan eksekusi telah selesai atau ada kesalahan pada device, misalnya paper jam tadi. The third one is I/O. This one is what I talked previously. It is caused by I/O controller. For example, the I/O controller detects that the paper is jammed. There is an error in the device. Then the I/O controller will create interrupt. And then another example is when the execution is finished. So in this case, printing job is finished. So that means the controller needs to notify CPU that the job is finished. And that's happen using the interrupt. Yang terakhir, yang keempat adalah hardware failure. Hardware failure di sini hardware-nya rusak. Misalkan memory parity error. Jadi memory parity-nya kok salah, error. Bisa jadi karena memorinya itu sudah rusak, sudah kadang-kadang harusnya yang disimpan angkanya 1, ternyata yang disimpan angkanya 0. Ketika dia cek, loh kok error? Nah ini hardware failure, harus interrupt. Atau power failure. Device yang lagi bicara, yang sedang diakses, mendadak mati karena listriknya mati. Nah itu harus diberitahu lewat interrupt. As one here is hardware failure, something wrong with hardware. So for example, the memory parity error. So for example, the memory chip might be faulty. So when the program wants to store 1 at a certain memory location, but then it is stored as 0. So in this case, the device needs to interrupt the CPU, saying that, hey, there is an error here. The device might be faulty. And then another example is the power failure. So in the case that the computer is communicating with a certain device and then the electricity for that device turn off suddenly without any communication, then in this case the computer needs to be notified that, hey, I cannot connect, I cannot communicate with this device anymore because there is something wrong with the device. So that the program and the user knows, okay, there is something wrong with this. So I need to do something, either check the device or stop communicating or do something else. Okay, and then Ini siklus interrupt. Mulai dari start, CPU akan fetch next instruction. Fetch next instruction itu artinya mengambil instruksi berikutnya. Setelah diambil instruksi berikutnya, dieksekusi. Kalau sudah selesai, kalau instruksinya sederhana, cuma satu saja, maka dia akan lari ke sini, halt ke bawah. Jadi di sini, so one is the interrupt cycle. It starts from here. The very first thing it needs to do is fetching the next instruction, taking in the next instruction. After that, it will execute that instruction. If there is only one instruction, then it will go here, halt, stop. Kalau instruksinya lebih dari satu, maka dia ada percabangan di sini. Apakah interruptnya lagi di disable, apakah interruptnya enable. Kalau interruptnya di disable, tidak ada mekanisme interrupt, maka dia langsung balik ke sini. Fetch lagi instruksi berikutnya, diexecute. Apakah sudah selesai? Kalau selesai ke bawah, kalau belum selesai dia balik ke sini. Fetching lagi terus menerus, loop sampai dia selesai baru halt. Now, if instruction is more than one, it has two choices. Here, one is when interrupts are disabled, and to the right one if interrupts are enabled. So in this case, let me go to the top one first, the interrupt disabled first. If there is no interrupt, then it will go back here and then start fetching the next instruction and then executing it again. It will happen again and again in a loop until the last instruction and then it goes to halt. Kalau interruptnya enable, maka setelah execute instruction, maka dia akan cek dulu ada interrupt enggak. Kalau ada interrupt, akan diproses ke interrupt di sini, interrupt cycle di sini. Interrupt cycle, execute cycle, fetch cycle. Ini fetch cycle yang di sini, execute cycle yang di sini, interrupt yang di sini. Dia akan balik ke sini, fetch next instruction. Tapi instruksinya siapa? Instruksinya dari si interrupt. Akan terus begini next mengeksekusi interrupt instruction. Kalau selesai, sudah dia cek lagi interruptnya enable enggak. Kalau tidak ya sudah, dia akan balik lagi ke normal. So, in the last option here, the interrupt is enable. After the execute instruction finish, it will check whether there is an interrupt or not. If there is an interrupt, then it will go to the interrupt cycle. It will fetch the next instruction not for the previous program, but the next instruction for the interrupt routine. And then it will execute that interrupt routine. Again and again, after the interrupt ended, then it will go back to the next instruction, the normal one. Ada pertanyaan sampai sini? Is there any question? If not, kalau tidak ada, saya lanjutkan. Pengecekan interrupt ditambahkan pada siklus instruksi. Interrupt checking is added to the instruction cycle. Prosesor memeriksa apakah terjadi interrupt. Prosesor checks whether interrupt happens or not. Jika tidak ada interrupt, kerjakan instruksi berikutnya. If there is no interrupt happening, then it will go working, fetching, and executing the next instruction. Jika ada interrupt, ditandai adanya signal interrupt. If there is an interrupt, shown by interrupt signal, then maka sudah program yang sedang dieksekusi. Stop working on current program being executed. 2. Simpan konteks. Konteks di sini ngomong tentang alamat instruksi, data yang sekarang sedang dieksekusi. And then second, save the context. The context here refers to instruction address the data being executed right now. It needs to be stored safely in some place first. 3. PC program counter itu sama dengan alamat awal rutin interrupt handler. Jadi diarahkan program counternya mengarahkan ke rutin ke metode untuk menghandle interrupt. Third, PC the program counter is set to first address for handling the interrupt, the routine for handling that interrupt. So basically, previously PC refers to program, the normal program. Now the PC needs to be pointed to the routine that handles the interrupt. Jadi yang sebelumnya PC ini menghandle program normal, programnya awal yang sedang dikerjakan. Tapi begitu ada interrupt, maka PC di sini harus diarahkan ke alamat rutin tempat si mekanisme untuk interrupt itu terjadi. Lalu keempat, kerjakan interrupt sampai selesai. Work the interrupt handling routine until it finishes. Berikutnya, kembalikan konteks. Jadi konteks yang di sini tadi ke lokasi CPU. Terus PC-nya tadi dikembalikan lagi ke alamat saat terjadi interrupt. Next, restore the context, the stored context here to the register inside the CPU. And then also set the PC, the program counter, to the address for the program previously before we set the PC towards the interrupt routine. Terakhir, lanjutkan eksekusi program yang tertunda tadi. Lastly, continue executing the interrupted program. Ada pertanyaan sampai sini? Any question? Is there any question? Next. Contoh interrupt. Ini ada user program, di sini ada interrupt handler. Jadi user programnya ini memori, ya. Satu alamat memori itu punya instruksinya sendiri-sendiri. Demikian juga interrupt handler, di sini ada berupa alamat memori, ada instruksinya sendiri. Interrupt example. We have this user program, this column. It symbolizes a memory started from 1, 2 until M here. For every single number here, it has an instruction. It has in another column interrupt handler. It is similar thing. It is kind of memory address where every single row has one specific instruction. So, for example, in here, di sini contohnya dia lagi mengeksekusi 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 dieksekusi perintah-perintahnya. Ketika dia sampai ke I, dia kena interrupt. Kalau interrupt jadi di sini di I, maka dia harus di stop dulu. Terus dia akan pindah ke program yang menghandle masalah interrupt. So, for example, in here, we run the program starting from instruction 1, instruction 2, first instruction, second instruction, third instruction, so on and so forth until interrupt happens. In this case, it needs to be stopped. And then the CPU goes to the interrupt handler mechanism, interrupt handler routine. And it will start executing whatever instruction in this section. Nah, kalau si CPU-nya sudah sampai di sini, maka CPU-nya akan mengeksekusi perintah-perintah yang ada di sini. Sampai selesai, baru dia akan balik. Alamat mana? Alamat I+1. Setelah itu dia akan meneruskan programnya sampai selesai di alamat M. So, after the CPU execute interrupt handler routines here, it finishes, and it will come back to this memory location, I+1. And then the CPU will continue the execution of the user program until it finishes at location M. Ada pertanyaan? Any question? Oke, lanjut. Ini saya perbesar dulu. Ini perbedaannya antara program I/O dengan interrupt driven I/O. Kalau yang program I/O, dia di sini dia kirim issue read command to I/O module, CPU kirim data ke I/O. So here we have the program I/O flowchart and interrupt driven I/O flowchart. In this case, when we try to read data in program I/O, the CPU will issue read command to I/O module here. CPU send something to I/O. Setelah itu, and then the CPU will read status of I/O module. I/O will send something to CPU. And then it will check the status ready or not. If I/O is not ready, it goes back to here. Jadi dia akan ngecek statusnya. Device-nya siap dibaca atau siap ditulis atau tidak. Kalau tidak siap, maka dia akan balik lagi, read status lagi. Demikian terus terulang di sini. It is a loop for checking whether the I/O is ready or not. Or if there is some error condition, it will go up. It will go out here. Kalau ada kondisi error, dia akan keluar. If it is ready, then it will read the word from the I/O module. Because it is reading data, it will read. So from I/O, send something to CPU. Jadi di sini kalau dia ready, baru dia akan baca datanya di sini. Sekali lagi ini prosedur read, bukan prosedur write. Jadi dari I/O kirim sesuatu ke CPU. Setelah itu, CPU write word into memory, from CPU to memory. Is it done? Kalau not done, dia akan balik ke atas. If it is done, then finish. Next instruction. This one is for program I/O. Untuk interrupt driven I/O, for interrupt driven I/O, it is something like this. CPU issue read command to I/O module to send something to I/O. Do something. Setelah itu CPU do something else. Makanya putus di sini. Tidak ada tanda panahnya. That's why there is no arrow coming from this block to this block. Because CPU can do anything else. And then this block will be initiated if there is an interrupt. Jadi blok ini akan dimasuki, akan mulai dieksekusi kalau ada interrupt di sini. Then read status of I/O module from I/O sending something to CPU. Check status. Ada whether there is an error condition or not. If it is ready, then read word from I/O module. I/O kirim data ke CPU. Setelah itu write word into the memory. CPU send something to memory. Is it done? If not, it will go back again to this part. If done, then next instruction. So in program I/O, dalam program I/O, CPU terlibat langsung dalam mengendalikan I/O. Dia membaca status, menerima atau mengirim perintah transfer data. Kelemahannya, selama menunggu operasi I/O selesai, CPU tidak melakukan apa-apa dan waktu CPU terbuang percuma. Kelemahan berikutnya, CPU harus selalu memeriksa status modul I/O. Dan berikutnya lagi, performansi sistem menurun. So, in program I/O, CPU involved directly in controlling the I/O, whether it is to reading the status, sending the command, and then transferring the data. That's why the downside for this program I/O is that while waiting for I/O programs to finish, the CPU cannot do anything else. That means CPU's time is wasted. And then the next downside is that CPU needs to check the status module I/O again and again continuously. And then lastly, the downside is that the system performance is bad, is awful in this case. Ada pertanyaan? Ada pertanyaan? Lanjut. Ini melanjutkan program I/O. CPU dia mengirim perintah ke I/O, menunggu hingga aktivitas I/O selesai. Terus CPU memeriksa bit-bit status secara periodik. Modul I/O melaksanakan perintah CPU, men-set bit-bit status tidak berinisiatif memberi laporan status dan tidak menginterrupt CPU. So, again for program I/O from the perspective of CPU and I/O module. From the CPU, CPU needs to send the commands to I/O module, and then it waits until the I/O activity finishes. And then CPU checks the status bits periodically. From the perspective of I/O module, it is doing what CPU asks from it, and then sets status bits and then send it back to CPU. Set status bits. Then I/O module does not initiate the status report. The CPU is the one who reads the status report. Di sini CPU-nya yang aktif, dia memeriksa bit status. Modul I/O hanya sekedar men-state, dia diam. And then module I/O does not interrupt the CPU. Again, CPU needs to check regularly. Apa yang dilakukan CPU dalam program I/O? Dia mengirim alamat modul I/O dan alamat device ke dalam modul jika dalam modul tersebut terpasang lebih dari satu device. Dia mengirimkan what is CPU doing in the program I/O? One, it sends the module I/O module address and device address. So in one computer, it might have several I/O modules, and in one I/O module, it can have several I/O devices. So in this case, in program I/O, the CPU needs to be specific which device it wants to access. Jadi dalam satu komputer bisa punya beberapa modul I/O, dan satu modul I/O bisa punya beberapa devices. Nah, makanya kalau dia mau mengakses satu device tertentu, dia harus spesifik. Dia mau mengakses yang mana? Alamatnya modul I/O apa? Alamat device-nya apa? In order to be specific, the CPU needs to specify the I/O module address and also device address. Yang berikutnya, mengirimkan perintah atau komen. Komen di sini bisa terdiri dari beberapa jenis. Ada perintah control, ada perintah test, ada perintah read, dan ada perintah write. Control itu untuk mengaktifkan, activate. Control is for activating the peripheral. Untuk menyuruh peripheral melakukan sesuatu, to ask the peripheral to do something. For example, rotate a disk, move the head of the hard disk, or anything else. And then for test, ini untuk memeriksa satu device, to check the device status. Is there any electricity? Is there any error or any other else? Untuk read, it asks data from peripheral through I/O. For example, reading data from hard disk. So in this case, the CPU asks something. I want to access this data. Then it will send the request to module I/O module, and then the I/O module will set the hard disk to that particular memory that is being requested. Jadi di sini kalau proses reading ini tadi, CPU kirim perintah, aku mau baca data ini ke modul I/O. Modul I/O nanti akan menentukan, oh ini yang dia minta, ini ada di hard disk. Maka hard disknya alamatnya sekian. Maka modul I/O harus menyesuaikan dulu, diputar dulu, dicari dulu alamatnya ini ada di mana ini. Baru setelah ketemu, baru dibaca. Berikutnya untuk write, itu untuk memberikan data ke peripheral, to send the data to peripheral. For example, writing a data to hard disk. Ini yang interrupt driven I/O dari sudut pandang CPU dan modul I/O. This is interrupt driven I/O from the perspective of CPU and I/O module. From the CPU, it sends commands to I/O, and then it plus other routine, other programs, other methods. And then CPU checks the interrupt status. If there is one, then will allocate it will execute the interrupt mechanism, interrupt routine. And then, for example, in this case, because it is coming from I/O, it reads the data and then save the data to memory. From the module I/O perspective, it is executing what is the CPU request. And then, if it is finishes or there is a problem, then it will send an interrupt to notify the CPU. Ada pertanyaan di sini? Ada pertanyaan sampai sini? Rasanya saya tidak usah mentranslate satu kalimat demi kalimat ya. Saya akan lebih banyak ngobrolnya pakai bahasa Inggris saja ya. Toh ini materinya dalam bahasa Indonesia sehingga mahasiswa yang bahasa Indonesia bisa langsung membaca dari materi. Nanti kalau ada pertanyaan silahkan bertanya. Tapi saya akan menerangkannya dalam bahasa Inggris saja ya. So, I plan to talk in English only because the written information here are in Indonesian. The Indonesian students can understand what is happening, what I'm talking about by reading what is written on here. If there is any question, you can ask me question through the chat mechanism. Okay? Is there any question so far?
Yes.
Okay. Let me continue. Interrupt-driven I/O. What is CPU doing in this case? First, it sends read command, and then it works on the other program, and then it checks whether there is an interrupt or not. Every time the instruction ended, execution of the instruction ended. If there is an interrupt signal, then it will save the context data in the registers, and then program counter will be adjusted, and so on and so forth. I will go back up here later on regarding interrupt. In the second part of this class, in the operating system part, I will go back to this context saving again. Jadi simpan konteks di sini nanti akan saya jelaskan lagi nanti di bagian kedua dari perkuliahan, yaitu nanti di bagian yang sistem operasi. Ini kita kan sekarang kan ada di bagian yang organisasi komputer. Nah, ini dari sudut pandang organisasi komputer itu seperti ini, dari sudut pandang hardware-nya. Nah, ini dari sudut pandang sistem operasi gimana nanti ada di bagian kedua. So, in this class, I divide this into two parts. The first part, the first half, is about the computer organization, and the second part is about the operating system. So, in the operating system, we will talk about these two, about how to save the context when interrupt happens. And then next, it will handle the interrupt. That is, in this case, if it is reading data from I/O device, it will read the data and then save it to a memory location. Now, in terms of efficiency, time efficiency, if it is programmable I/O, it is something like this. Programmable I/O itu yang bagian kiri di sini. Jadi, di sini executing first program, the first part, and then executing the fourth part, and then it will wait. It will wait. The processor here will not do anything. It will wait because it waits for I/O operation. It waits from input or something. And then after the I/O operation done, it will execute program 5 here because program 5 depends on the input coming from the I/O operation here. And then it will execute program 2, program 4 again, and then wait again. Program 5, and then program 3. However, if it uses interrupt here, with interrupts, It will start from 1 and then executing 4, and then here it needs to wait. For here it doesn't need to wait. It can start executing program 2 here, program 2, while the IO operation happen. When it finishes the execution, it will wait, check interrupt, enable. Okay, it's okay. There's an interrupt. Then it will wait a bit to reallocate or to save the context and then readjust the PC, the program counter, and then it will do 5 here, here. And then after here, it doesn't have to executing number 2 because number 2 is done. Number 2 is here. So it can start directly to executing number 4. Number 4 is here. No more 2 because 2 is done. 4. And then after 4, 4 is waiting. Should be waiting. It doesn't have to because it is interrupt enable. It will start executing number 3 here. 4, 3. After 3 done, it will check interrupt condition. Okay, there is an interrupt there, so it will set up the context and PC, and then execute 5, and then done. So here it only takes this amount of time compared to this amount of time. So we can see that the right hand is more efficient than the left hand. Jadi yang kanan lebih efisien daripada yang kiri. Interrupt driven I/O. This the details. Device controller or other system hardware issues an interrupt. Nah, jadi ada device controller yang mengirim sinyal interrupt di sini. Kemudian prosesor menyelesaikan eksekusi dari instruksi yang sekarang. Terus prosesor memberikan sinyal acknowledgement of interrupt. Jadi maksudnya oke, bahwa dicek ada interrupt enggak? Oh, ada. Kalau ada, oke, sekarang saya akan mengeksekusi interrupt. Here in this case, processor check whether there is an interrupt signal. Oh yes, there is one. So it send the signal that okay, now I'm going to execute the interrupt now. Next is processor pushes PSW. PSW is program status word atau isi register. And PC onto control stack. Disimpan di tempat yang aman. It is saved into a separate and safe place. And then processor loads new PC value based on interrupt. Berdasarkan interrupt, dia akan mengeset alamat PC, program counter ke alamat memori yang baru. Then save remainder of process state information. State information yang lain disimpan. Setelah itu process interrupt, the interrupt is processed. And then restore process state information after interrupt is finished running. And then restore all PSW and PC. The diagram is something like this. Diagramnya ada di bawah di sini. So, right now, program is executing n plus 1. N plus 1 here. N plus 1. This one is the user program. We are executing this program. Now, interrupt coming in. That means I need to save the program counter to somewhere place, in this case in control stack. And then general registers, whatever internal registers values are right now, it will be saved in this control stack here. And then the program counter will be replaced by Y. Y is here. This is the program of the interrupt. Ini adalah program untuk menghandle interrupt. Nilainya alamatnya Y di sini akan disimpan ke program counter, menggantikan alamat yang lama yang n plus 1 di sini. Terus stack pointer previously sebelumnya nilainya T di sini, sekarang jadi T plus T minus M. Karena M di sini adalah jumlah general register dan program counter yang tersimpan di sana. Setelah itu dia akan mengeksekusi yang ini. After that, the interrupt cycle will run. The CPU will execute this program. After it finishes, then sesudah interrupt di sini, then it will restore the program counter going back to here, and then the control stack will be copied back again to the CPU. And the stack pointer now it is pop. Now it goes back to T, then stack pointer back to T. Is there any question? So this one is CPU, the processor. This one is the main memory. Is there any question so far? Ada pertanyaan kah?
Nggak ada, Pak.
Oke, nggak ada. Lanjut. Interrupt identification techniques. How do we know that a module or a device sends an interrupt? How do we handle multiple interrupt? Misal, example, program interrupt handler interrupt lagi. Maksudnya di sini adalah when we are executing an interrupt handler, then there is another interrupt coming in. So there is a multiple interrupt. How do we handle those? So we first we need to identify the interrupt. Teknik identifikasi interrupt. There are several ways to identify where the interrupt is coming from. First one, we use many interrupt lines. For every single module, we use one line. The downside of this approach is that it's not practical because we need to have the number of lines as the same as the number of interrupt or the number of the device. And then the second downside is that number of device that can be connected to the computer is limited because definitely the number of line is set up from the factory. If we have more than what is given by the factory, then we cannot add anymore. So this is the downside. Jadi kalau ini satu jalur satu device. Nah, jalurnya ini kan yang masang di pabrikan. Kita beli sudah selesai, pabrikannya ada. Nah, kalau pabrikannya cuma ngasih 16 device gitu ya. Kita mau pasang 17 device tidak bisa. The second technique is by using software polling. The downside is it is slow because it needs to check one by one each device of the I/O. The mechanism is something like this. If the CPU detects there's an interrupt, then CPU acts to every single I/O module to know who is the one creating the interrupt. For example, CPU can send signal test I/O, and then the device responsible for the interrupt will answer the signal. Ini mekanismenya menggunakan software. Jadi modulnya satu saja, tapi CPU-nya tanya satu-satu, semuanya ditanyai. Tadi yang interrupt siapa? Jadi harus secara serial ditunggu, sampai ada satu yang jawab, baru nanti akan dihandle. Makanya dia di sini ngomongnya lambat. In this case, the polling mechanism happen in software. The CPU will handle everything. In here, CPU will send the question, who is sending the interrupt signal one by one to the I/O module until one device answer, yes, it was me who sent the interrupt signal, and then CPU stop querying, and then the CPU starts to handle what is the interrupt for the device. So that's why it is slow, because it needs to serially process one by one for each devices. And then next, the third way is daisy chain or hardware pooling. Previously it was software pooling, this one is hardware pooling, or vector. In here, it use only one interrupt line connecting to every single I/O module. One I/O module is connected to the other I/O module serially. So it's something like this. So this one is bus terminator. This is the first I/O module or the first device, and then it will whenever CPU asks who is creating the interrupt signal, it will send it to here. If it doesn't, it was not the device, then it will pass on the CPU signal to the next device. If this one is the one who was sending the signal, the interrupt signal, then it will answer to here, to the bus. Jadi ini mekanismenya ya. Jadi kalau CPU tanya, siapa tadi yang lempar sinyal interrupt, dia akan lempar ke sini, ke device yang pertama. Kalau device pertama bukan yang lempar, maka dia akan teruskan sinyalnya ke device kedua. Kalau device kedua ini yang melempar sinyal interrupt, dia akan jawab ke sini, ke bus terminator. Itu gambarannya. Ini hardware. Karena hardware, jadi device-nya harus memang punya mekanisme untuk saling terkoneksi dengan yang lain. Because this one is hardware, and every single device needs to have some kind of line, some kind of mechanism to forward the signal. So yeah, the mechanism is something like this. Module I/O module sends interrupt to the bus, the common line. CPU detects interrupt and then send signal to one I/O module. Signal will be estafeted, will be forwarded to another module, and so on and so forth. Only module who send the interrupt signal will give an answer. Answer is in the form of word or vector. It will be put in the data line. The word data is the module I/O module address or the unique identity. So in this case, if this device is the one who sent this interrupt signal, it will send its address, I/O module address, or its device unique ID or something else. Jadi kalau dia yang device ini yang mengirimkan sinyal interrupt, dia akan menjawab di sini adalah alamat addressku di sini loh, alamatku, atau kode unikku ini loh, atau informasi yang lain yang relevan. And then vector is used as a pointer to access the device who causing the interrupt before CPU run the interrupt handler mechanism. So because it is in the form of vector, it is called vector interrupt. Jadi yang tadi yang diisikan di sini itu menunjuk langsung ke alamat device sumbernya tadi. Nah, makanya karena bentuknya ini vektor, ini disebut juga sebagai vector interrupt. Terus berikutnya, last one, is bus arbitration. Ini juga vektor juga. Interrupt sending is done only if IO module has control over the bus. Jadi signal I/O itu baru bisa dikirimkan kalau sebuah device itu menguasai jalur busnya. Kalau dia belum menguasai jalur bus, dia tidak akan mengirim interrupt. The mechanism is something like this. The module I/O send request to use the bus. So in this case, the bus is a common line, can be used by many devices. But in this case, if one device wants to use it, then it will send a request first. Jadi ini ceritanya busnya ini satu jalur digunakan bersama-sama. Jadi kalau ada satu device mau pakai, dia harus izin dulu, request dulu. Aku mau pakai. Siapa yang dikirimi request? Yang dikirimi request adalah arbiter di sini. So, arbiter is the one whom the module I/O, the I/O module send its request to, the arbiter. Arbiter controls, manage how to grant access to the bus to a specific device. So, only one device can access the bus at a particular time. There is no way two or more devices can access the bus at the same time. No, arbiter is one who is responsible to make sure that only one device can access the bus. And then module I/O sends the interrupt because the arbiter already give the permission to that module I/O module. Then that particular I/O module send the interrupt. CPU detects the interrupt and then responds through acknowledge line. And then I/O module send the word or the vector to data line. So in this case, bus arbitration, the difference between the fourth method compared to the third method. In the fourth method, we have this one. We have arbiter. Previous method doesn't have this one. Jadi beda utama antara metode keempat dengan metode ketiga itu adalah metode keempat ini punya hardware khusus yang namanya arbiter. Arbiter inilah yang mengatur jalur bus. Tidak boleh ada dua device mengakses bus dalam waktu bersamaan. Oke. Last method is DMA, Direct Memory Address. Why DMA is needed? Because program I/O and interrupt driven I/O still needs CPU, and then it will make CPU busy. And then data transfer rate is more limited, is lower than the DMA in here. So DMA is a solution. What is DMA in here? So in this case, for same reading process, the CPU issues read block command to I/O module. CPU sends the request to DMA. It doesn't send the request to the I/O module. Ini CPU itu ngirim perintah data, pembacaan data, block command data itu ke DMA atau modul I/O. DMA nantinya menghandle DMA. Jadi DMA ini kayak prosesor terpisah. So in this case, DMA is something like a separate processor. So and then after the CPU sends the DMA the command, then CPU do something else. If there is some interrupt happening, then read status of DMA module. DMA sudah selesai mengerjakan, maka DMA ngirim datanya ke CPU. Maka CPU next instruction. Loh, apa Pak bedanya? What is the different then? There's still an interrupt here. But what is different with this DMA? Sama-sama ada interrupt, Ini atapnya ada DMA, apa bedanya di sini? Nah, ini bedanya begini. DMA functions. DMA di sini is a special hardware connected to the bus system bus. Main function of DMA module is to it can act as a processor, and then it can take over some processor functions which are related to transferring data. That is DMA. So it is not a fully fledged processor, but it can do certain processor functions. Then when the DMA work, when the processor is not using the bus, and then the second, when the processor is forced to halt or suspend the cycle by the DMA. This one, the mechanism when the processor is halted, suspended because the DMA is working, it's called cycle stealing. Jadi proses DMA ini bekerja ketika prosesor tidak sedang menggunakan bus, atau ketika prosesor dipaksa disuspend, diberhentikan karena DMA sedang mencuri siklusnya si prosesor. Nah, mencuri siklus di sini disebut sebagai cycle stealing. Ini diagram modul DMA. Modul diagram. It has data lines connected to data count, data register, and address register. It also has address lines. And then it has control logic connected with DMA request, DMA acknowledge, and then interrupt, read, and write. How the DMA works? CPU sends this data to the DMA controller. The first one is a read-write command, and then device address that is wanted to be accessed, and then the beginning memory address that is wanted to be read or to be written, and then the number of data blocks that wants to be transferred, and then after sending this to the DMA controller, CPU can execute other programs. After receiving the command from the CPU, the DMA controller checks the module I/O. If it is writing instruction, jika itu adalah instruksi untuk menulis, maka DMA controller will send whole block data. Kalau ini perintahnya adalah perintah read, kalau ini if this one is reading instruction, then it will send whole block of data per one word directly to memory. Jadi dia ngambil datanya dari device I/O, langsung disimpan ke memori tanpa lewat CPU. In this case, the DMA controller read the data from the I/O device and then directly put the data into the memory, the main memory, without going through the CPU. The DMA controller mengirim interrupt ke CPU jika telah selesai. After the whole block of data transferred to the memory, then the DMA controller sends the interrupt to CPU, notifying that the process is done. You can continue process the data. Is there any question so far? Okay, let's continue. Cycle stealing, ini tadi yang sempat disinggung. This one is I mentioned previously. Cycle stealing. My controller takes over the bus in one cycle. DMA controller transferred one word data. This takeover by DMA is not an interrupt. CPU does not need to save its contact and readjust the PC. Basically, the CPU stop working and then DMA working, DMA copy the data to memory, and then that's it. CPU can continue its execution cycle. Jadi di sini CPU itu tidak perlu melakukan checking interrupt. Jadi ketika dia disuspend cycle stealing di sini, CPU itu di stop, kerjanya di stop. Terus DMA kerja, dia ngopi datanya ke memori. Kalau sudah, CPU bisa melanjutkan lagi. Dia tidak perlu context switching, tidak perlu konteksnya dipindah. CPU only suspend one cycle before accessing bus. That is before operand related command or reading data or writing data. What is the impact toward the CPU? It is definitely slowing down CPU. But this one is still better rather than CPU directly involved in transferring the data. Jelas pengaruhnya memperlambat CPU, tapi jauh lebih baik daripada kalau CPU-nya terlibat ke data transfer. Ini gambarnya, gambar diagramnya. Ini processor cycle, fetch instruction, decode instruction. In this part, DMA breakpoint can happen, and then DMA can still cycle. This one cycle will be used by the DMA to do the memory transfer. If not, it goes directly like this. Process cycle, fetch instruction, decode instruction, fetch operand, execute instruction, store result, press interrupt. Ini interrupt. This one is the interrupt breakpoint. But if there is DMA interrupt, it can happen within this section. Not between this section. Jadi, DMA breakpoint, DMA stealing itu bisa terjadi pada section-section yang di sini. Tidak bisa terjadi di section yang di sini. Kalau dia terjadi di sini, maka dia akan keseluruhan di sini akan digeser. Satu cycle di sini akan digunakan oleh DMA untuk mentransfer data ke memori. Dan yang fetch operand jadi yang ke sini, execute instruction jadi yang ke sini, store result jadi ke sini, process interrupt jadi yang ke sini. Ini mekanisme DMA transfer. Ada pertanyaan? Is there any question? I think this is the last slide. Reference is here. William Sterling 2003 Computer Organization and Architecture Designing for Performance. Pak Yoga still use the 6th edition in here. Is there any question? Yes. Absen presensi. Sebentar, saya belum siapkan. Saya siapkan dulu sekarang presensi. Jadi kalau ada pertanyaan, siapkan pertanyaannya. I'm preparing the absence, the presence. Oh. Wait, let me finish this first. Okay. Oke, saya sudah posting absensi untuk pertemuan kedua di Google Classroom. Now I have posted the presentation QR code on the Google Classroom. Please do your presentation absence there. Now, question. Can we combine interrupt-driven I/O and DMA in one system? Yes, definitely we can, because in DMA we still use the interrupt mechanism. So when the DMA controller finish doing the job, it will do the interrupt mechanism too. Ya, ini pertanyaan begini ya. Apakah kita bisa mengkombinasikan proses interrupt driven I/O dengan DMA dalam satu sistem yang sama? Jawabannya adalah ya. Karena dalam sistem DMA itu juga mengandung interrupt juga. Ketika DMA selesai bekerja, jobnya selesai, maka dia harus melakukan interrupt untuk memberitahu CPU bahwa pekerjaannya dia sudah selesai dan supaya CPU bisa melakukan proses. Kalau tidak gitu, kalau tidak ada interrupt dari DMA controller, tidak bisa. Nah, however, we cannot do one part interrupt system and then one part DMA system. No, it doesn't work like that. If we use DMA, then the whole system should use DMA. If one use interrupt, then the whole system should use interrupt. Otherwise, it can compete to each other. Well, DMA tries to do the bus transferring. It can get interrupt, and then things might get awry, things might get bad. Tapi tidak bisa digabung. Jadi sebagian pakai DMA, sebagian pakai si mekanisme interrupt. Karena ketika DMA lagi transfer, dia lagi cycle stealing tadi, ternyata ada interrupt dari device. Nah, itu bisa kacau itu. Yang seperti itu. Is that clear enough? Is there any other question? Ada pertanyaan yang lain? Again, make sure that you do the presentation. I don't know. I don't know the English word for presency. Attendance. Attendance. Attendance checking according to your class. There are two QR codes images there for class C and class D. So make sure you use the correct one. Jadi gunakan QR code-nya karena ada dua, ada kelas C dan kelas D, gunakan yang sesuai dengan kelasnya. Oke. Nah, ini kalau absennya error, bentar saya cek. Saya lihat yang kelas D sudah ada 15 yang berhasil absen. Jadi harusnya kelas D tidak ada masalah. Yang kelas C saya lihat ada 19 yang berhasil absen. Jadi kalau absennya error itu berarti kelihatannya kelasmu yang salah. By the way, ini mana komtingnya di sini? Saya belum melihat ada yang menuliskan namanya sebagai komting. Kalau tidak nanti ruwet problem di masalah daftar presensi di sini, karena komting harus memberikan validasi terkait materi yang disampaikan. Oke, tolong kasih komting. Kelas C 1 komting dan kelas D 1 komting, terus tulis di di komentar salah satu komentar saya. Salah satu postingan saya. Silahkan berkomentar di sana. Oke, itu saja. Ada pertanyaan kah?
Tidak ada.
Kalau tidak ada, Bapak. Kalau tidak ada, saya cukupi sekian. Ketemu lagi minggu depan.